everyone. So I just have to let you guys know up front, I have never been so frustrated trying to prepare a video for you guys as I have been trying to prepare this video for you today. But that is why I knew 100% I had to make this video for you guys, because if I'm this frustrated after trying to find answers to all of these questions so I could explain these things to you today, I cannot even imagine how frustrated some of you guys have been trying to find answers to these same questions. So I really hope that this is going to be a helpful video for you today, but we are going to be talking about corms, tubers, bulbs, and rhizomes today. All of those things are categorized under an umbrella term called geophytes. And these are structures that unfortunately lots of times are getting used, the names are getting used like interchangeably. So you might see something referred to as a bulb when in actuality it's a corm or a tuber. And it's just so confusing because even all the stuff that you see out there online and in other videos and things, a lot of it is wrong. It took a lot for me to find some of these answers for you guys today, and I'll be honest, there is one thing that I am still not clear on, and I am so frustrated about it, and we will talk about that at the very end of this video. But basically, I want to explain to you what the actual differences are between these structures. And it's important for you guys to know the difference because how you use them to potentially propagate a plant is going to be slightly different depending on which thing it actually is. But at the base level, all of these things are actually underground storage structures of a sort. So basically they're there to store up, sugars in some cases, or just other energy producing things for plants so that they have enough energy, for example, after they've gone maybe dormant to grow back the next year. That is like their energy store to be able to start to push out that new growth. Now, some of these are going to be super common to you when I give you like the most basic example I can, but I will be also flashing up on screen for you as we go along what plants have each of these structures to the best of what I've been able to determine. And as always, because this is actually the second video in what I'm calling my plant nerd series. The first video was the video where I gave you kind of the scientific explanation of variegation. Just like in that video, I will put in the description down below links to all of my resources that I went to find out this information. I try to only pull from actual like scientific resources. So fingers crossed that means the info that I'm giving you is as close to accurate as possible today. But let's start off talking about rhizomes first. And even before we get into rhizomes, I actually want to go back, and if you've seen my video on how to propagate alocasias from corms, I do talk about stolons in that video, and that stolons grow from a stem and they kind of trace along the ground and they try to find a place to root down and produce a new plant. Now, a rhizome is actually very similar to a stolon, except that where that stolon is actually being created or coming out of an existing stem, a rhizome is actually itself a swollen underground stem. Now I say underground, but in my research it kept coming up that sometimes rhizomes can be underground, but sometimes rhizomes can be above ground. And I'm gonna go with they can be above ground because of this post done by Steve's Leaves on their Instagram page, in which they show what they have labeled as a rhizome on one of their mother begonia plants. And can we just take a quick look at this and talk about how freaky this kind of looks? I mean, this kind of looks like an octopi, like an octopus plant. I don't know, it's crazy. But this is an excellent way to show you and kind of explain how rhizomes work for the most part. So most rhizomes do grow horizontally regardless of where underground or above ground they are growing. And as they grow along, as you can see here, we have new leaves and new shoots coming up from the top of the rhizome. And so underneath there is where the roots will form and go down into the ground. So here's the list of plants that I was able to find for you that have rhizomes. So you can propagate these plants from rhizomes as well. I'm not gonna go into how to propagate from all these different underground structures that we're talking about today in this video though, because we'd be here all day. But let's move on to the next structure that I want to talk about, and we're going to talk about bulbs next. Now, what annoys me about the term bulbs is that bulbs is kind of gets used more often than anything else to describe like most of these things we're talking about today. I've seen like all kinds of plant tubers, plant corms labeled as bulbs, and they're not bulbs. So let's talk about what a true bulb is, and the easiest way for me to show you what a true bulb is to show you this here onion. An onion is a bulb. This is the best example I have of a bulb because you guys, I'm sure nobody out there is unfamiliar with an onion, right? So a couple things you need to know about this. So bulbs have what is called a basal plate. So that is the flat, hard spot that you see here on the bottom of this onion, and this is where the roots will grow out of. Every true bulb will have this. Also, you see our little papery covering here. This is basically similar to a tunic, and if you've seen my How to Propagate Alocasia Corms video, you'll know we had talked about that because corms do have tunics, and we'll get to corms here next after we talk about bulbs. But the really defining different characteristic of a true bulb versus, for example, a corm is that these have layers. So basically this is a modified stem, first of all. A bulb is a modified stem, and inside of your bulb you have modified leaves. So when you cut into an onion and you see all of the layers inside of that onion, each of those layers is actually a modified leaf. That is where your leaves will develop from over time. So if you've ever cut into an onion and you've seen in the very center, it'll have like almost like green leafy stem at the top point of that very center part. That's because it was trying to actually push out some new leaves at the time that it was harvested. So that is the biggest difference between true bulbs and corms, which we're going to talk about next. Now, as far as our characteristics for our bulbs, they're typically going to be round or oval or teardrop shaped, and they're going to have on the opposite side of where that basal plate is, they're going to have a point, and that point is where the new growth will come from when it's growing up out of the ground. Now, as far as how bulbs or bulb-based plants reproduce, I guess, if you will, basically what happens is over time they will produce what are called bulblets. So basically it's a baby bulb. So imagine if there was a baby onion attached like right here around the basal plate, they'll get little baby onions around there and they will develop and grow into full-sized bulbs as well. So I'm going to flash up on screen now for you a list of plants that are grown from bulbs. And once again, you can propagate all of these plants using just the bulb. But right now I want to move on to talking about corms. So corms are probably the thing that most frequently gets called a bulb that's not really a true bulb. And the reason it's not a true bulb, and I did just go and snip off a corm that I saw growing right at the surface off of my Alocasia maharani for you guys. So this is definitely small. Corms, by the way, you guys can get rather large on some plants. So maybe, I don't think maybe as big as an onion, but definitely, you know, like garlic bulb size would be possible on some plants. But for the maharani, they aren't going to get like super big like that. So we have our little corm here. This is where it was attached to the stem of the plant. So once again, corms are also modified stems like bulbs. They do have that kind of papery brown, you know, outside layer to it, just like the onion did. So once again, that is called the tunic. And even though it's hard to tell on a tiny little corm like this that I just clipped off, there is actually a basal plate right here at the base of that corm where it connects to the stem. And that is where the roots will develop from when you're propagating a corm or when a corm is just, you know, growing naturally in the wild. Now, once again, just like that onion, it does have a point on this end, and that is where the new growth, the new leaves will develop from. Now, I do know that I said a second ago that this is a modified stem. It is a modified stem, but if I'm being more specific with you guys, it's actually a swollen stem base versus actual stem like with your true bulbs. Now, the biggest difference that you're also going to find in the corms versus the bulbs is that if you were to cut into a corm, it's going to look solid. It's not going to have those layers. It doesn't have those modified leaves inside. That is one of the biggest differences between true bulbs and corms. Now, corms are typically round, maybe a little bit teardrop shaped, but they tend to have kind of a flatter end to them. I just lost part of the stem on that, but that's okay. We don't need that. But basically what I mean by that is if you can see like that end where up here at the top before that point kind of flattens out, kind of like, you know, the bottom of a pear. A pear looks teardrop shaped, but then the bottom of it is kind of flatter. That is a distinguishing factor as well between corms and true bulbs. But similar to those true bulbs that produce the bulblets as part of their reproduction process, corms actually will produce what are called cormels or cormlets. And so same basic thing, they can develop new corms off of an existing corm. And if you are, you know, if you do have alocasias and you've ever seen like a whole new plant start to sprout up in your pot from underneath the ground, that is because your original corm that your current plant was grown from has produced cormels or cormlets, and now they have started to develop into their own new plant. Now I'm going to flash up on screen for you the same list of plants that I flashed up in my How to Propagate Corms video, and I do want to make a quick quick note. Some of these plants in the research process I was doing today do have corms, so not lying to you guys, some of these plants do have corms, but other varieties of the same plant, some of them have tubers, which we're going to talk about next. And a lot of this goes back to that whole plants changing genus all the time. I don't know. All I know is for some reason, some of them have corms, other varieties of the same type of plant will have tubers. So if you have any questions on a specific type of plant, be sure to comment down below and let me know. I will do my best to find an answer for you guys. But let's move on to talking about tubers. And this is where I'm probably going to get potentially a little bit ranty today. I feel like I've been doing a good job of not getting ranty in videos for a long time now, but I spent most of my time researching today on tubers because it was so frustrating, you guys. So much like different information, conflicting information, like I don't know, all kinds of confusion. And if you have ever looked at your Calathea's roots and you have seen those bulbous masses, and if you've asked me about them before, I've told you that they are tubers, and they are tubers, but what kind of tubers they are, I can't even tell you how much time I spent researching that. Once again, we're gonna get to those Calathea tubers here in a second, but basically let's talk about like the overview of tubers first and what I was able to deduce. The first thing you guys actually need to know, and this took me by surprise when I figured it out, is that tubers actually develop from rhizomes and stolons. Let that sink in for a second. So I always was under the understanding that rhizomes, bulbs, corms, and tubers, and even stolons were all separate things. And while they are all separate things, not until hours into my research today did I discover that tubers grow from rhizomes or stolons. Mind blown, right? So just keep that in mind. Your plant could have or will have rhizomes and tubers, stolons and tubers, not just one or the other of all of those things. Now, the other thing that I think in the back of my mind I kind of knew, like, or I suspected, but it wasn't spelled out really anywhere in any of my past, like, just things I've come across in the plant world talking about it, and that is that there are different types of tubers. And actually, let me back that up for a second. So tubers can be either modified stems or they can be modified roots, which means that we have what are known as stem tubers or we have what are known as root tubers. So let's talk about stem tubers first. And honestly, I feel like when I show you these pictures, I feel like these things should be named the opposite, even though logically, scientifically, I get it, but just from a visual standpoint, it kind of messes with my brain. So I want to show you this example real quick of root tubers versus stem tubers. So I would look at this and I would honestly think that the root tubers would be the one that is on, I gotta think about this, it will be on your left. On your left, that is what I would think would be root tubers, but it's not. Those are stem tubers and those are your basic potatoes. And I'm talking like russet potatoes because apparently sweet potatoes are not stem tubers, they are root tubers. Like I said, you guys, things started getting really confusing around this point in the research. So these potatoes though, are stem tubers. They are technically modified stems. They are attached to the stem. And one of the things that defines them is the fact that they develop eyes. So if you've ever had potatoes and you've had them sitting in your pantry for a while, you'll know that they'll start to get what we call eyes. And those are places for new plant growth, new stems to develop, basically. So that allows you to actually propagate these types of tubers. Like you can actually like cut a potato up and plant parts of the potato, like separate parts, as long as they have an eye, and they will all develop into individual plants. Now, everything else we're talking about today, you cannot cut it up and propagate each piece and have it work. You're basically just going to ruin the thing that you're trying to propagate with if you cut it up. But these stem tubers are different. Now, on the other side here, we have what are called root tubers. So technically, these are modified roots. They are not related to the stem. Now, these are a little bit trickier. So here's what dahlia flower roots look like, and they do have root tubers. So these, to me though, it kind of like, you see why I think it's a little bit confusing is because they're up closer to the stem versus the other ones are down with the roots. That's why I feel like the naming of these is so like messing with my brain. But regardless, these are actually modified tubers on the dahlia plant. Now, you can grow from these. They can be harvested, they can be propagated. You can find them in a lot of your garden centers in the springtime. But the trick is you have to include part of the crown, and part of the crown is where the stem grows from. So you can see in this diagram where that crown is. If you don't include part of the crown, it will not work if you try to grow a plant from a harvested tuber that's a root tuber like this. Now, in addition to having part of the crown, they also need to have the start of a bud, which also in this situation is referred to a lot of times as an eye. If you don't have that, and also if you don't have enough like, what am I trying to say? Sufficient like root storage to make a new plant. So like if that tuber was like super small and it didn't have enough energy stored in it to actually develop a new plant, it's not going to work either. It's kind of like how I tell you guys, like the smaller a corm is, the less likely it's going to work when you propagate it. Same kind of concept here. But you need all of those things in order for this to be able to grow into a plant, just propagating it from a tuber with nothing else on it. So here's a quick list of plants that have root tubers. And obviously, you guys, I hadn't mentioned it yet, but another root tuber that everybody's super familiar with is the good old-fashioned carrot. That is actually developed from a tap root, so the basic main root that grows down into the soil that then just gets swollen, and that's what develops as a carrot. But as you will notice on this list of plants, you might be thinking, hey, Drea, I didn't see any kind of Calatheas or Marantas or anything from the prayer plant family of plants on that list, and let me tell you why. Because I could hardly find anything out there explaining this. This right here is a tuber that I sacrificed off of my Calathea Freddy for you guys, because this is what you will see in your Calatheas, which by the way have been reclassified as Gopertia, don't forget. But you will see these on the roots when you're repotting. Now, here's the thing that is crazy to me about this. I was sitting here now knowing everything I know about tubers from all this research, trying to figure out, is this a stem tuber situation or is this a root tuber situation? Because if you look here at this is a picture from when I repotted Freddy back in, I believe it was spring, and you can see all these tubers and they're further down in the soil. They're not like the carrot where it's up at the surface of the soil coming like, you know, directly below where the stem on the surface of the soil is. This looks more to me like the potatoes we see here, where it's like we have that modified stem growing down, then we get the tuber, then we get more stem going, and so on and so forth. So just looking at this, I want to say that the situation you're seeing in your Calatheas and other prayer plant family plants is actually stem tubers. However, if they're stem tubers, you should be able to propagate using them, and you cannot. I definitively have found tons of places where it says you cannot propagate by taking this, and I did stick it in some water, you guys, because I'm just gonna see what happens for you guys, basically, because I'm so frustrated with everything I read today. I don't understand why you can't propagate with it. So I'm running an experiment for you guys, but everything I've read said that you can't do this, that this won't work. Even if I put it in water, even if I put it in soil, whatever it may be, that you can't grow a Calathea from one of these. Now, that leads me to believe that maybe it's a situation like with those dahlias where these aren't stem tubers, these are actually root tubers, and that's why they say you have to divide the plant and you have to have, you know, actual parts of the leaves and everything when you go to propagate Calatheas. So that would make sense. However, it doesn't make sense because once again, all of these roots are down lower in the soil. I'm not seeing a lot up by the surface where those leaves are coming out. That is why it is so confusing to me and I don't understand it. But even if they were further up at the top, once again, everybody's saying like you can't propagate via this, but you should be able to. If you can do a dahlia that way, if a Calathea grows in the same way, you should be able to propagate it in the same way. So I am massively confused. I am massively annoyed. But once again, I still wanted to create this video for you guys because I'm sure some of you that are watching this right now have been in this same situation I'm in right now. And the best thing I can do is to say, it's probably not able to be done because honestly, you guys, if you could propagate from these, why aren't people harvesting these and selling these in your garden centers like they do with the dahlias, like we do with, you know, all the plants I listed that have the other types of tubers and everything? Why aren't they doing it? Why? You know what I'm saying? So I do believe that all the information out there saying that you can't propagate with these is probably accurate. Once again, you know, I'm just going to test it out anyway. But what is very frustrating to me is that nobody really explains why. Because nothing I read said that any type of tuber couldn't be propagated via a tuber. There were just specifications. So like I said on the dahlia, you have to have the crown, you have to have the eyes or the start of, a bud, and you have to have a sufficient enough tuber to have enough energy in there to actually grow the plant. Now with potatoes, we know you can propagate potatoes. Once again, the number one thing I saw for stem tubers was they had to have eyes. I will tell you what, I actually went, when I took Freddie out of his pot earlier and I harvested this off him, I was like washing off as many of the tubers that were around the edge of the soil that I could see with a magnifying glass, trying to see if I saw anything that resembled an eye. I didn't. I knew I wasn't going to because I would see like the start of offshoots of plants in the soil if that were the case. But I am just massively confused. And I'm starting to question if there isn't further classifications of tubers and if this isn't a different type of tuber completely than the two that I have described to you today. I will continue to try to see if I can find out for you guys. I will definitely let you know what happens with this. But in the meantime, I really do hope that this has been at least somewhat helpful for you guys, because if you haven't experienced any of the level of frustration I did trying to research this, I feel you, and hopefully this is going to help you out. If it has helped you out, please be sure to click that like and/or subscribe button below. That will help it spread to more people who are probably equally as frustrated as we have found ourselves to be. But if you guys are interested in knowing how to propagate corms specifically, and you have not watched my corm propagation video yet, you can check that out next right here. But thanks so much for joining me today, you guys, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Aloha!